Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah.
Good evening, fellas.
Look at that. I'm the
Good
best
evening.
man.
Hey.
You topped
Best
off.
man.
Yeah.
Chills.
Cheers.
To round
Cheers.
two of the Bond novels.
Round 2.
Sounds good.
All right, we return, fully robed again. Once again, because it's freaking cold.
It's all that snow.
Real quick, probably should have done this last time, but I went ahead and threw Amazon affiliate links for all the books in the description.
That's a smart idea. I like that idea.
Because if we could make a penny, 2 pennies off of this, then it's all worth it, you know.
That'll pay for about a minute of heating your cabin.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Not even a minute, like a nanosecond.
Yeah.
I have multiple heaters on me, and then I have another one in the other room. I also ordered another one that actually mines Bitcoin. So it's the most expensive heater I should put Amazon affiliate links for that.
Oh my god.
No, the product doesn't even exist yet, and it's probably a scam, but it's just a computer that runs really hot. So some guy was like, "It's a space heater."
I mean, my computer
Bitcoin.
makes my room real hot when I'm playing COD or Halo.
Exactly. Yeah, you might as well be mining Bitcoin and shut off your heat. But yeah, I put in Amazon affiliate links for the complete collection of the books and then all the individual books. I bought it actually I've been reading it on iBooks, and I got the whole thing for $40. And the only downside is that it's all one big text with really without chapters. So it's like when you start reading, it's like you have 2,000 pages left in this chapter. I'm like, that doesn't help me at all.
I like what McCurdy's got. I don't know if that's a new thing, but I was seeing it all over Reddit. It's like they're all designed really cool. I don't know.
Very cool.
The
what do you mean though?
Have.
Oh yeah.
Oh, this one. Oh yeah, no, this is one of
the latest prints.
So let's see.
Yeah, they're really cool.
This is the. Let me see what edition this is. Yeah, they're all like black and white as far as the cover designs go. This one's Moonraker.
Those are the ones that I linked because they look sweet.
Yeah,
and they're all uniform. Really cool. I like that. And that's the thing. I'd either like them to all be uniform or to have like
or not uniform at all.
Well, there's like some really cool artwork. Like if you just Google
this is the 2012
series, there's really cool artwork.
This is the 2012 edition. And then there's another one. We can do screen share, yeah?
Sure.
So there is this one. How do I do that?
We haven't done that in a while.
How do we do? How do we do this?
You need to sign up for premium, and then in order to sign up for premium, we need to sell a lot of books.
Let's see.
You look into that, and I'm going to read a quote from Casino that I meant to read last time. I mentioned this in our pilot episode because this one, as much as you would assume that you would find a lot of this kind of talk from Bond in the novels, you really don't. It's his reaction to he's just beat Lashif, so he's high out of his mind on this victory because gambling's his thing. And to the point where later on we find out that Bond goes back to Casino Royale annually. We'll talk a lot about that in the future because I think that's a very important point, especially for the Craig films, something that they should have done. But anyway, so he had a victory dinner with Vesper, just like in the film, and then just like in the film, she gets kidnapped and he chases after her. And in the movie, he's just obviously worried, and we're in action movie mode. In his mind, though, in the novel, he's kind of pissed. So as he drove, whipping the car faster and faster through the night, I picked the wrong time to start reading. I got beer burps. With the other half of his mind, he cursed Vesper and M for having sent her on the job. This was just what he had been afraid of. And he says this right before she shows up. He's like, I think he's talking to MI6. He's like, oh, shit, you're sending the lady. Oh, fuck. He's all pissed off about that because he's like, she's just going to get in the way. And then, so it says, this is just what he had been afraid of. These blithering women who thought they could do a man's work. Why the hell couldn't they stay at home and mind their pots and pans and stick to their frocks and gossip and leave men's work to the men? Again, he's like driving along as he's doing this. And now for this to happen to him, just when the job had come off so beautifully. for Vesper to fall for an old trick like that and get herself snatched and probably held to ransom like some bloody heroine in a strip cartoon, the silly bitch.
Oh my God.
And you would think that you would have a ton of that throughout the novels because it's James Bond. But that's really it. That's kind of the thing is the reason I wanted to read that is expectation is you'd find that a lot. But in reality, not only does later on Bond's like, I think I want to marry this woman. He also just continues to meet incredible women that challenge everything I just read. Right. Not only does Vesper herself, the subject of his thoughts, defeat that, but as time goes on, he'll meet these chicks and he kind of has these thoughts of falling in love with them every time. And we kind of talk about how in the movies, you don't really ever get that sense. You usually get the sense that maybe they're falling in love with him, but he isn't. And then other times it's kind of forced, like when they just have a love montage with Tracy, even though I don't know why he would be interested in her. But anyway, but like book Tracy, you totally get it. But in a warped way, because she's kind of a hooker. But my whole point being that you would think you'd see a lot of this, but he really just meets like awesome chicks, and that echoes what we said last time about Ian Fleming writing these, just fantasizing about these incredible babes that only exist in his mind and now in our hearts. Anyway, did you figure it out, McCurdy?
Yeah, give me 2 seconds, and I think do you
want me to just add it?
Hold on, give me
All
2
right.
seconds here.
I'm gonna zip for it. The last thing I read was about Bond sitting down with M, and he just loves M, like a son loves his father. But now I can't manage to get through iBooks.
There we go. I think you have to do it, right?
Yep, I'm gonna do it right
There we
now.
go. So these are
those are cool.
I like these a little bit more. I mean, they're much more colorful in design. I found these on Darren's movie and book reviews, but these look really cool. I like the artwork. I like how it's just very kind of collage-esque. You can see like Live and Let Die. You've got, Mr. Big, Solitaire.
That's the art I'm talking about. Those are actually what are in
this.
my iBooks series is this.
Yeah.
I think they're nice. And I'd rather it be this or the uniform black and white one that
these are also, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you guys collect the Criterion collection at all, but like this kind of reminds me of that kind of style of artwork. It's just very clean, very uniform, very neat looking.
And they're actual really cool. Attractive females rather than
it's
none
like the
at
male
all.
version of females erotica books.
Like, why can't we have that? Exactly. Why can't we have real life Dr. Quinn, medicine woman, looking like that Solitaire right there, just totally naked with a couple of playing cards, over her breasts,
Yeah.
But now we do. Or Moonraker, we have this nice phallic image.
But Charlie, you and I were talking about doing like if they ever went back, did the books verbatim. Bondum. I'm not that drunk yet. I'm trying to get there. You're like, no.
Don't force it.
Bondum. Like, this is the style. Like, this is kind of the look that you would want out of all those. If they, went back and were like, yeah, we're going to basically take the 1950s and 60s and it's going to be like a TV HBO series or a BBC series, and every episode's going to be like an hour long. Or 2 hours,
Why are there
like something
crows
like
all
that.
over Man with the Golden Gun?
I actually started Man with the Golden Gun today, and
maybe
I'll just mention real quick again. I don't know if anybody's actually going to read these, then maybe don't listen. But it's a really very unique beginning, because what happens is that at the end of You Only Live Twice, he deals with Blofeld and Bunt, and then he falls into the ocean, and he's had his ass kicked. So Kissy Suzuki rescues him, and she kind of selfishly thinks to herself, I kind of love this guy, and he has amnesia now, so I'm gonna I'm gonna strip his life of the West entirely and convince him that he actually is just my husband here in this small fishing village in Japan. And she tricks Bond into believing completely that he's Japanese and all that. But then eventually, I think one day he's taking a shit and he finds a little newspaper clipping that has a Russian city on it.
In
So
his shit?
he kind of like it wakes him up, and he tells her, "Are you pulling up the?"
Yeah, if you want to switch it to this one, so you
Cool.
can see that.
Yeah. So then, so the novel ends with him leaving. He kind of rows off to go find the West again. So the man with the golden gun picks up with, and I'll get to these quotes at some point because I highlighted some cool stuff, but it has to do with Bond getting back into MI6, and they show you the mechanisms they have for that, because we would think that he would just show up and they'd be like, oh, Bond's here, but there's actually this whole process that's meant to protect M and like any kind of heads of MI6. So they go through the whole
like a fake or something.
Yeah, exactly. So they go through this whole song and dance. And then, and they're like, this is definitely James Bond. We thought he's been dead for a year. We even had an obituary, just like in the beginning of You Only Live Twice. But he goes through the whole song and dance. They know it's him, but they're like, something's up. This is weird. This is really weird. So he's like, I won't tell anybody anything until I sit down with them. So he sits down with them and immediately tries to kill him, because the Russians are the one, he went to Russia. The Russians scooped him up and were really nice to him and brainwashed him against the West. So he tries to murder M with a cyanide gun, but M has like a Q thing that shoots down and encloses him in glass. It's like M becomes Blofeld for a second. And anyway, like Bill Tanner and the head of security rush in, and they take Bond away. But yeah, like James Bond brainwashed by Russians. I never thought that we would see that, but it's
really kind of like a Manchurian Candidate type of
story. Exactly. And then after that, M's like, his immediate plan is, okay, I'm gonna just send him after Scaramanga, because it's either gonna kill him or it's gonna snap him back into his original identity. So it's a wildly different opening than. In Man with the Golden Gun, the film, remember, Roger Moore just walks in. He's just like, morning, sir. Then that's it. Next quote here. This is from Russia with Love. Again, I highlighted these at random, so I don't really know what they are and have little context. Bond put the thought of his dead youth out of his mind. Never job backwards. What might have been was a waste of time. Follow your fate and be satisfied with it. And be glad not to be a secondhand motor salesman or a yellow press journalist, pickled in gin and nicotine, or a cripple or dead. This is Bond saying, "Count your blessings."
I find that quote ironic, in that George Lazenby got his. That's how he started, was a car salesman. He was a used car salesman in Australia.
No way, really?
Have you? I mean, you guys watched the Becoming Bond documentary, right?
Yeah, not for 10 years or something. So maybe
it just came out not that long ago.
Dude, it's 10 years old.
Really?
It's 10 years old. Yeah.
Wow, well, it seems like it's a lot newer than that.
They really marketed it recently, I think.
I need to revisit it.
Yeah. So in Becoming Bond, George Lazenby. When he was in
affiliate
Australia.
Links. No, I'm kidding.
When he was in Australia, and he was getting his start, he was a used car salesman, and that's how he made money for a while, and he was still doing.
And then he became a model.
And then became a model.
Yeah.
And then he was. And then became James Bond. Then he became James Bond.
Became a model selling used cars.
Yeah. I just think it's fun. It's ironic that that quote is in the book. Question: I was thinking about this when we did our last little chit chat about the books. Is there what's it like with Q in the books? Because I know like the films kind of ups the whole like secret gadgets type thing, and like, and I think what I read was
Bond
when
really, or sorry, Q really just doesn't exist.
really, so he's
Yeah.
barely in the book. He's not even in the book.
No.
Do
There's Q
gadgets are
branch.
just revealed in the field or something? Like, oh, Bond pulls out a thing that does a thing.
Yeah, I know in From Russia with Love,
Like that
I think he,
suitcase is in there, right?
yeah, and I think the gun is in there, but it's not the thing that saves him. It's not like it is in the movie.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering all this correctly, but like I don't think Q is in the books. Like I never really even thought about it because I kind of, and there is Q branch. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. But
Because I do remember reading when we were talking about Goldfinger, and I don't think this was in the episode, but Fleming was still live when they did the first two movies.
Yeah.
And they were working on Goldfinger. And I mean, obviously he was working on the stuff in the books. And we had even mentioned how one of the later books, they start to reference his Scottish heritage because of Sean Connery playing James Bond rather than what
and
he
that's
originally...
in You Only Live Twice. At the end, in his
Yeah.
obituary, it talks about his Scotland and his parents.
Yeah. And so they had, he went in and did that. But I do remember, I think there was something about the gadgetry in Goldfinger and how, not that he hated it, but he just thought the movies had gotten more, maybe science fiction is the best way to put it, or more fantastical than what is in the books. Because the books are, like you said, they're a lot more grounded, maybe, than what's in the films, right?
Yeah. Everything I'm always saying about how there's sorry, I literally am just searching for Q, just the letter Q, and I found a single quote, but I don't know how accurate.
Yeah, you'd
or
have to go
how
and read
well this
into
is
it.
happening.
What
Like
about
right
Major
here,
Boothroyd?
in Live and Let Die, book 2. Take some leave, he had said. Plenty of leave. Oh, okay. So Live and Let Die opens with Bond already in New York, but then the second chapter is him sitting down with M and getting his mission. Take some leave, he had said. Plenty of leave. Then get some new skin grafted over the back of that hand. Again, I was saying he got his hand cut by Spionum in the first book. Q will put you on to the best man and fix a date. Can't have you going around with that damn Russian trademark on you. But otherwise, I'm sure Boothroyd is in there, but it just Q just isn't a thing. But so anyway, there are obviously that's the main thing, right? That's going to be our discussion when we get to the Casino Royale, 2006, which will be the differences between
You'll have to wait
just
a whole
how
other.
the
You'll have to wait a whole year for that one, right?
yeah. Just how the movies had to just go ridiculous, right? Because they're movies and they're for the popcorn eating masses, and then the books can afford to be a little more low key. And like, for example, The Spy Who Loved Me is just about a chick. It's just like you talk about You Only Live Twice being a travelogue. That's what Spy Who Loved Me is. It's just, and it's from the perspective of this woman the whole time.
Yeah.
Bond shows up at the end. So you could do all this crazy stuff, but obviously with the films, they had to just go crazy. So and I say all that, but then at Dr. No, he fights a giant squid.
Okay.
And I'm not kidding. Like, he fights a giant squid. So
Because that was something that they were going. I think they said they tried to shoot that or something like that when they did Dr. No.
Hilarious. Okay, I searched for Q.
I think they did,
and all I found was that single quote.
Interesting.
And it took forever to do that. I don't know why that took so long. But now I'm going to search Branch and see what happens.
What about Boothroyd?
No matches on Branch. Let's try Boothroyd. I believe it says Booth and then Royd.
Yeah.
Nothing, which doesn't make sense. I mean,
because it
don't
should
think
be.
I'm wrong
it
about
definitely
this.
should be in Casino Royale or one of the books.
Let me
Definitely
try without.
in one of the books.
I'm going to try without quotes around it and see what we get. Okay. You may not know 007, but Major Boothroyd is the greatest small arms expert in the world. He wouldn't be here if he wasn't. We'll hear what he has to say. I believe this is in, and this is what's interesting, is that because of the, because they started with Dr. No, they really followed it verbatim. And the whole scene with Boothroyd coming in and giving him the, taking away the Beretta and giving him the Walther is exactly, that's verbatim. So they really adapted the book faithfully, and then that affected everything going forward. And that's what I mean, is that they really kind of developed Q Branch on their own. Okay, let's see. Most of the searches for Boothroyd, I believe, they might be specifically just from Dr. No. Yeah. Jesus. Okay, so all of Boothroyd is just contained within that scene, just of giving him the Walther.
What?
So, they really created Q as we know him out of thin air. And again, you asked me that question, and I'm like, wait, Q, wait. I don't recall him ever being like, I know Q Branch is,
but yeah, and like it's
reference.
I mean, to be fair, Q is very. I mean, we always imagined Desmond Llewellyn probably had 2 days on set, or maybe 1 day on set. Same with M for a good chunk of the movies, at least, where he shows at the beginning, has one scene that they may spent 2 days to shoot, maybe.
Yeah. Like,
and
okay,
then
here's Q
then
Branch
a
will
little
fix all that.
thing at the end.
This had been prepared for him by Q Branch, and there was a narrow compartment under the leather. I think he's talking about I think that's from Russia with Love. Again, I'm just looking through the search here, and it's like, Q Branch made this. No, just Q. It's Q Branch and then Boothroyd in that one scene of that one book. So that's another one of those things where it's like, what if they hadn't started with Dr. No? Like we were talking last time about happy accidents, I guess, and something kind of negative, and then getting that silver lining out of it. And all of Q is because he gave him a Walther PPK one time. So, all right, getting back into this. Here it is. So this is Karen Bay. Again, this is from Russia with Love. My father was the sort of man women can't resist. All women want to be swept off their feet. In their dreams, they long to be slung over a man's shoulder and taken into a cave and raped. That's Karen Bay.
They all want to be.
Well, I
right.
wonder why that didn't end up in the movie.
Again, no comment. Moving on. Karen Bay, though, that is pure Karen Bay. And then he's such a pleasant guy. And then, it really makes me refind the quote section every time. This is a bad system. Okay. That is bad psychology, my friend, Karen Bay had insisted. No girl likes a man to run when she whistles. She would despise you if you made yourself too available. Like I was saying last time, there's a lot of red pill stuff in these books. I think men should be reading these books if you can't tell that already. Now the eyes were opaque again, the eyes of an introvert, of a man who rarely looks out into the world, but is forever surveying the scene inside him. I think I just highlighted that because I like the science of introvert and extrovert, and that's an interesting way to put it. Bond hated someone else touching his gun. He felt naked without it. He said gruffly, "But on the light side, but it'll kill you. Wait a minute, but it'll kill if you put the bullets in the right places." I don't know what is going on here. Hang on, let me zip to the end. This is still from Russia with Love.
Huh.
So I think I don't know if maybe he's hanging out with Nash. Yeah, he's hanging out with Nash, and he's like, "Hey, can I check that out?" And Bond's like, My gun is an extension of my penis, and I don't want you touching my penis. Bond hated someone else touching his gun. He felt naked without it. He said gruffly, "Bit on the light side, but it'll kill you if you put the bullets in the right places." It's very Bond. I wish I could just. Maybe I can. No, see, this is what I mean. This system I have, all I see is page 1702 out of 4254, and it doesn't just automatically tell me what book I'm on. And they're all formatted differently. So I'm just going to read this one with no context of where it came from. Because M looked morosely at Bond. See what I mean, 007? Just a sort of mare's nest these old women's societies are always stirring up. Okay, this is Dr. No. People start preserving something, churches, old houses, decaying pictures, birds, and there's always a hullabaloo of some sort. The trouble is these sort of people get really worked up about their damned birds or whatever it is. They get the politicians involved, and somehow they all seem to have stacks of money. He's talking about Karens. God knows where it comes from. Other old women, I suppose. And then there comes a point when someone has to do something to keep them quiet. Like this case, it gets shunted off to me because the place is British territory. At the same time, it's private land. Nobody wants to interfere officially. So I'm supposed to do what? Send a submarine to the island for what? To find out what's happened to a covey of pink storks. Basically, there's a lot of where Dr. No kind of like his whole thing is he's on this island where he's generating guano, and so but I can't remember. It's something about how it's affecting the birds or whatever, like their nesting ground.
Like there's no
of a certain
radioactive.
kind of.
It's not like a radioactive plant, or it's not a bromine. What was
Yeah,
it?
there-
in the
yeah,
movie?
there's-
It was like
there's none of
bromine or
that.
something in the movie, but in this it's a
Yeah, and this
I
is
knew
just
that.
guano. Like he's just
and they use that
generating
for
this
gunpowder
fertilizer.
or whatever, right?
I think it's just really powerful fertilizer.
Yeah.
So it's
Mhm.
really valuable. And that's the thing. You know, when you read the books, a lot of them, again, like Live and Let Die isn't heroin and all that. It's gold doubloons being smuggled. So you know, that type of thing. So with this, there's none of the, again, we talked about it like, oh, it's the atomic age and Bond, you know, radioactivity and all that stuff. How interesting, and toppling rockets. But are they toppling the rockets in there? They might be. I'm getting everything mixed up in my brain, mostly because what Dr. No, the thing that stood out to me and where I loved it was and something that I will not forget, because the other stuff, you know, the guano and all that is somewhat forgettable, or toppling rockets. But what really stood out was that remember when Bond is initially put in that electrified cell, and he just uses his shoes to
Mhm.
knock it out, and then he climbs up into that tunnel and he crawls around a bit, and then he comes out, and then he just goes and starts kicking ass, and that's the end of the movie.
Mhm.
That's kind of dumb, right? Because it's like what brought down Dr. No? It was that he put Bond in a cell that he could easily escape, right? But who cares? But you care when you read the novel, because what happens is that Dr. No says, I'm kind of a creep, and I like not torturing people before they die, but studying them. And I'm gonna study how hard I can torture you before you die. So he puts him in that cell, and the first thing Bond has to do is get out of it, but it's electrified, and so he's got to defeat that. And what happens is he's kind of put into imagine him going through like one of those gerbil cages, right, with all the tunnels, but every section that he gets to is some horrible thing that he
man.
has to defeat, and it's still like I it's rare that you're reading a book and you're screaming while you're reading the book, like, and you're like, "Ah!" Like it's like watching the movie The Thing. You're just disgusted because like at one point, remember the tarantula that was in his bed?
Mhm.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. There's actually like a centipede in the novel, but in but when he's crawling through the tunnels, one of the trials he gets to, and as he's doing this, there are all these, like Japanese scientists kind of peering in, or are they Chinese? They're Chinese scientists. Actually, they're Chingros, or whatever they call them. They're like black Chinese. A lot of them. They're either Chinese or they're black Chinese. It's weird. Anyway, so they're all watching him, like they're observing him, and he's in this narrow tunnel, and he's battling about 100 tarantulas, and it's like
Not centipedes?
it's so gross. No, it's tarantulas, and they're like the way he describes it, and how they're hairy, and he's like stabbing them and squishing them and fighting for his life. It's terrifying, and then he faces like horrible heat. He's got to crawl through the ducts while they're like hot, and then I think while they're
kind
cold.
of happens.
And it beats the shit out of him until finally he's crawling this whole time, and then suddenly he's going down. It becomes a slide essentially, and he's ejected into the ocean. And so not only is he's like beat up, but then he has to not drown. And then right when he climbs onto a rough fence that's there, right? Because I think he's too far from the shore. And then to top it all off, that's when the giant squid attacks. So it's like amazing. It's amazing. And the whole time he's worried about Honey Ryder, because her whole thing is that she's going to be nailed to the ground, and then these crabs kind of migrate over the land, and like the tides at a certain time, they're going to crawl over her and they're going to eat her alive basically. And then so Bond, he gets out of all, he defeats all those trials, and then sneaks around the island and finds Dr. No loading up one of the ships with all the guano, like this fertilizer powder that smells like sulfur. And he kills Dr. No by dropping a fresh shipment onto him. So he suffocates on his bird shit. That's how Dr. No dies. Like it's like, this is all awesome. And then he runs into Honey Ryder, and he's like, how did you escape? And she's like, oh, I just made friends with the crabs. I'm just friendly with all of nature. They didn't want to eat me. So it's
sounds ridiculous.
It's wild. It's ridiculous, but I love it. I love it.
Is this the book that made them decide we need to make these into movies?
I'm guessing everything I just described was the first thing to go. And as we talked about,
the crab thing, the thing with the crab was filmed. Like they were going to film it or whatever. I don't remember if they did film it or were going to film it.
I'm sure not with thousands of crabs in the book.
I think they couldn't get it
to
get it to work the way they wanted, and I don't remember if they changed it to rats or something like that. But if you remember when he goes to grab her in the movie, she is on the ground, like there's water coming in. I believe it is a deleted scene. But I don't think it's not like deleted scenes today where like, they'll save it and they'll put it on the DVD or it's stored someplace. A lot of times they would just throw that stuff
literally on the cutting room
trash.
Floor. Yeah.
They would just get rid of it.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. Again, I can't preface this enough. I'm just reading these with zero context and trying to do it on the fly. So I think this is Honey Ryder right after everything I just said. Bond thought this girl has always had to fend for herself. And that's true. She's really hot, but she had her nose broken. So she's like perfect. And then she just has, her nose is like that. She's like, I'm saving up money to go to America and fix my nose. And he's like, no, you're mine. Bond thought this girl always had to fend for herself. But only against nature. She knows the world of animals and insects and fishes, and she's got the better of it. But it's been a small world, bounded by the sun and the moon and the seasons. She doesn't know the big world of the smoke-filled room, of the bullion broker's parlor, of the corridors and waiting rooms of government offices, of careful meetings on park seats. She doesn't know about the struggle for big power and big money by the big men. She doesn't know that she's been swept out of her rock pool into the dirty waters. So again, he's like, you're pure if you just, because she's so innocent, and I was I not so subtly pointed that out in the Dr. No episode about how, Bond essentially has sex with a 12-year-old at the end of that movie, and which is kind of awkward, but anyway, and what's her name? Andress certainly doesn't have any flaws. Bond says, "Yes, isn't it?" Bond was thinking of his gun. He was wondering how well it would shoot after a bath in the river. How many dogs and men he could get if they were found. Okay, so take back what I said before. This is when he's just met her, right? What I read before was when he just met her. He was wondering how well it would shoot after a bath in the river. How many dogs and men he could get if they were found. He felt a wave of disquiet. It had been a bad break coming across this girl. In combat, like it or not, a girl is your extra heart. The enemy has 2 targets against your 1. Which is a very Bond thing. And and yet every adventure he ever goes on, he has that extra heart running next to him. As again, that's one of the things I love about GoldenEye is that Alec Trevelyan is just pointing out Bond tropes the whole time. Time for one shot, James. The girl or the mission? Okay. So this is gonna get really sexy. I think this is after they've been captured by Dr. No, and they're dressed in kimonos and stuff. Bond's hand was on her left breast. Its peak was hard with passion. Her stomach pressed against his. Why not? Why not? Don't be a fool. Okay, so he do you remember in 127 hours when he's like, don't masturbate, don't do it. And he's like drinking his own piss. He's like, if he masturbates, he's gonna die.
I don't remember that.
That's the whole thing. He's fantasized as he's trapped, his arms trapped. He's trying to conserve as much energy as he can. He's thinking about those girls that he was with, and he's tempted to rub one out, but he's like, you can't afford to lose all that protein. So anyway, Bond, if I recall, he's in that weird hotel room with Honey Ryder, and he's like, all I want to do is get it in, but he's like, don't do it. Like you will lose. It's like rubbing one out before the Super Bowl. You're gonna lose. Keep it in. And so anyway, why not? Why not? Don't be a fool. There's a crazy time for it. You're both in deadly danger. You must stay cold as ice to have any chance of getting out of this mess. Later, don't be weak. Bond took his hand away from her breast and put it round her neck. He rubbed his face against hers and then brought his mouth round to hers and gave her one long kiss. He stood away and held her at arm's length. For a moment, they looked at each other, their eyes bright with desire. She was breathing fast, her lips parted so that he could see the glint of teeth. He said unsteadily, honey, get into that bath. I said that. Honey, get into that bath before I spank you. And Bond says it a lot. He threatens to spank women a lot. So it's amazing that we only saw that in Goldfinger with Dink. But yeah, I almost said get into that bed. That's very different. But the whole thing is she's like, I kind of, she's covered. They're both covered in mud or whatever. And he's like, he's trying so hard not to get it in because he just doesn't want Dr. No to win. So obviously I find that hilarious. Do you guys have any comment on any of this before I move on?
All I could think of was when you said they were covered in mud was that she was covered in radioactive crabs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, none of that.
So that's all that came to mind for me.
So then later when he's telling her what he does, because she doesn't know who he is or what he does. It's like this. I'm a sort of policeman. They send me out from London when there's something odd going on somewhere in the world that isn't anybody else's business. Very succinct way of Bond explaining what he does.
You had said previously that, I don't know if it's just the books or the movies too, but all the women either die or they just like break things off or whatever.
Yeah, like Bond doesn't deal with breakups.
Yeah.
Or birth control.
And you see all of that more thoroughly in the books?
Sorry, hang on. This has been the Charlie Show. Where's Nathan?
Yeah.
Hey! I was looking at you guys on the bottom of the screen.
You were just so enraptured by that
I just staring at my face.
peak,
Yeah.
hard peak.
What were we saying?
In the books, do you see like the women die or like the
He
breakups
mentions
or
it in the
whatever?
remember the last time he talked about how like there's the passage that talks about it,
Yeah.
though, right?
Wait, sorry, about how they die?
About breaking up or between
Yeah.
you know.
I read it last time of just about how it's like, just how he's like relationships always end the same way. It's like they're hot and heavy at first, and then eventually he has to move on. And what's funny is that what I'll get to is The Spy Who Loved Me, which is that's what the whole ending is about. It's about this woman coming to that conclusion herself. And I actually really, really like that book for numerous reasons. I was kind of shocked that Ian Fleming even approached it that way. Again, it's almost like he lost a bet. It's like, I bet you can't write a Bond novel from the perspective of a woman, you know, and he totally does, and I love it. And I bet feminists would fucking hate it. But they would hate it because it's so honest. Like, he really nailed the perspective of a damaged woman. Like, nailed it. So, anyway, he's talking to Dr. No, and I just highlighted this little tidbit. Again, he says, "Is Dr. No. Any man with a loaded revolver has the power of life and death over his neighbor." Just thought that was interesting. Or a good line. Because they're talking about the nature of power. Because, you know, Dr. No is like, I'm awesome. I'm so powerful. This, I believe, is still Dr. No.
Does Dr. No have robo hands in the book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think they were cut off by the Chinese mafia. Because, you know, the whole thing, like, you're a thief, so they cut your hands off.
And it has
I'm
nothing to do,
remembering
like,
that right.
this version has nothing to do with Spectre, because Spectre is not even a thing until Thunderball, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Exactly. And again, that's what's so interesting about the timing of all this stuff, you know, because Thunderball is one of the later books, and then it affects most of the movies, and then poisons most of them. Anyway, Pussfeller, I don't know why I highlighted this, but I guess, remember Pussfeller from Dr. No?
No.
I guess it's because he wrestles octopuses. So that's a weird thing for me to highlight. What a great tidbit of trivia.
We have a comment here from Unknown Cake Lover. I think he had claws or pincers instead of the ones from the movie.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, they were fake. You know, they weren't real.
Did the movie or the books incorporate the movie thing where their weakness is their downfall, or their like unique attribute is their downfall?
No, because again, he has all of that, all the feces, all the guano just dumped on him, and that's what kills him. He
Metal
suffocates
pincers
on
aren't good
shit.
for climbing.
So
exactly, like he needed scoops. He needed big scoops for hands.
So Charlie, let's go through. I'm going to ask you. We talked about Dr. No and how he died. So we're going to go through every book, all 14, and you're going to tell me if the deaths. You're going to remember if the deaths were the same or if they're different.
Remember,
Some of the books are not the same.
Mr. Big is burned into my head because it's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay, so we talked about
Jaws bringing him down. He's like,
now Casino Royale. I'm pretty sure it's the same.
Yeah,
that
verbatim.
movie, that book and movie is the same. Live and Let Die. We talked about it's completely different.
It's awesome.
Moonraker. There's no space, so he doesn't die. So how does Hugo Drax die in Moonraker?
Oh God. Oh man, I don't even remember. Which just goes to show, I think maybe he's arrested. I don't even know if he dies.
This is something.
You'd have a better chance of just Googling it, because.
And then Diamonds Are Forever. Blofeld's not in that book, but the mobsters are, and then they just basically die on the train.
Again, if anybody out there has read it, I do remember it, because I remember reading it and being like, am I reading this right? Is Ian Fleming dumb, or am I? I don't know what's happening, because they're on this train, right? Like he ends up in a Wild West town, and I think everybody's in costume. Anyway, he so they're on this train, and I think he sabotages the train, and I think him and Tracy either run along the train or they use one of these things. One of these cards.
no.
I think they do.
Unknown
Again,
Clever
it's like a
chimed
year
in.
ago that I read the early books. So
That
there's
sounds like a
certain things
That
burned
definitely
in.
sounds like a cartoon.
Totally.
K
So then
Clever
I
threw
think,
out he's on the submarine the Moonraker gets redirected to.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that's
okay.
right. You told me that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So he gets blowed up,
Thank you,
basically.
K Clever.
Load up.
Which is awesome. So they
Doesn't get
because
shot out
again,
in
the whole
space.
thing is that they're going to launch the Moonraker at just like a thing out in the ocean, and then his secret plan is that thing is actually going to be a beacon in London, and London
So
is going to
that's
disappear.
interesting though,
It's
because
awesome.
well, that's interesting because isn't it
That's the end of
Spy
the Spy
Who
Who
Loved
Loved
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, they redirect the
Yeah.
And then you
Exactly.
said
Okay.
diamonds are forever.
So
you
anyway,
don't remember.
so they're getting it. And this is what my brain did in reading the text, and I was like, I don't know if this is accurate, but it works for me. I think that I think that the train is barreling down on them, and Tiffany Case has a bright idea of hitting a switcher, which before it gets to them, the train turns, and I think it turns so quick that it derails. But as that's happening, I think Bond shoots the main bad guy who's operating the train.
And it's
So-
it's like the one of the mobsters. And
they're just
isn't
mobsters.
it?
They're the
Isn't it
Spangled
mobs-
Gang.
Yeah, but isn't the mobster in that movie? That mobster that is in that movie
Yeah,
is the mobster we see in the
Mr.
beginning of the
Franks.
Man.
Yep,
It's
yes.
that's the same. The mobster in the beginning of the Man with the golden gun.
Yeah, but
movie.
in Diamonds Are Forever, they're just mobsters. They're not like the heads of this big crime family or
No.
whatever. They're just goons, like literal goons.
And then From Russia with Love's the next book. Is that pretty much the same?
It's
With
so
Klebb and-
here's where it's different.
Grant?
There's no first off, Red Grant is literally a lunatic, like I said before.
Yeah.
Lunatic in the sense that every full moon, it's a blood moon for him, and he has to go kill people. And so
Like a
when he
werewolf?
defects to Russia, exactly. When he defects to Russia, they're like, we can actually really use this guy. And they let him once a month, they let him go nuts in the prisons. And it's creepy and awesome. And then so he goes to the whole song and dance with Bond, where most of that is the same of like,
Yes, old boy.
we're gonna you're
Yes,
dead
old
and all
man.
that, and Nash isn't who he turns out to be and all that. But he has so he's got the Q gadget, right? I think Bond has the case, but there's no gas, I believe. That gag doesn't exist, or if it does, that's not what does it. What does it, and again, clearing the cobwebs. What does it is that Nash has, as in Red Grant has, he has a book, and the book is a Q gadget. The book is a gun, and he's saying he's basically just going to shoot Bond, and Bond has to time this thing perfectly to where he puts he uses a different book. He uses a book and maybe something like a cigarette case, and he puts it over his heart. And I'm hoping somebody in the comments is like, you're wrong. This is what happens. And so he's like, I know that this guy is going to get me right in the heart. I trust his accuracy because I think he'd seen it before or something. Maybe in the gypsy camp, if I believe that existed. So they go through a tunnel, and that's when he shoots, and Bond like puts it over his heart right in time. And then he hits the floor. He plays dead. And then that's when he's able to get the jump on him. And I think they have a brief fight, and that's that. But there's no, or buy a cigarette, and Red Grant's like, money, that stuff that I've complained endlessly about.
And what about Rosa Klebb? Is she in the book? She is in the
Yes.
book, isn't she? And then how does she get? Is it kind of the same way in the
Oh,
book?
so what happens there? It's a really interesting ending because so she definitely, they just she's like the final piece, right? So I believe he goes to like a hotel or something to find her. Like he goes to find her. And
so she doesn't
and
sneak
he-
up on him as like the maid or anything like that.
No. And I think he goes to find
Does she have a
her,
knife
and he's like, I'm pretty sure, like, she's playing dumb. She's like, I'm just an old lady. Oh, who are you, young man? And he's like, I'm gonna kill this bitch. So when he finally confronts her, I think a bunch of men rush in, including I think it's Mathis, because it might be in France. Again, I've drunk
don't remember
a lot
everyone.
of whiskey over the last year. So anyway, I'm shocked I remember most of this. And then so she manages to stick Bond with that little shoe poison. She manages to stick him.
So she does have a shoe knife.
Yes, and Mathis is like, hey, we got her, and Bond's like, I don't feel so good, and the novel ends with Bond passing out on the floor.
Oh shit!
Like he's just like poisoned, and that's it. That's the end of the book.
And
You're
then
like,
does that
"Oh,
pick
wow."
up? Does that pick up from Dr. No?
Yeah, and he
I feel fine.
let's see. Or is this Dr. No? Okay, so this is Dr. Let me just jump to that real quick, because it was again, it's really hard to actually just jump to things because it's literally just one continuous text. So this might take me a second. Fill in, McCurdy.
I'm filling in.
I just
and
want to
then
know if Kananga goes out the same way.
we already went over that one.
Did we?
Yeah, Kananga is not in the books. Kananga is Mr. Big is Kananga.
Remember the thing
okay.
I was saying about how the shark
thing you were
gets him?
talking about.
Yeah, so just a refresher,
Mr.
in
Big
the
is-
movie,
okay.
in the movie when they were going to do location scouting, they came and they were in Louisiana. They came across this alligator farm, and they were like,
That's right.
being the producers that they were, it's like, this looks cool. Let's put this in the movie. Just like whatever. I don't care. Let's put it in the movie. So they add the alligator farm into the film. Well, the guy who owns the place, his name is Kananga, and he is also the guy who does the running. So they were like, oh, we're gonna change the name of Mr. Big, because Mr. Big is very much like kind of like they didn't want it to make it the stereotype, so they just kind of wanted to play both sides of it. So
And
we
again,
get
which
the
is a great call.
stereotype. We get the stereotype version of Mr. Big in Harlem, and then we find out that's actually Kananga in the whatever island he is.
Which I think is
from.
a fantastic
cool.
way to go about it, other than the fact that they hardly utilized it. We covered that extensively in that episode. So this is the so Mathis comes in, they're like, we got her. Mathis comes in, he says, take her, au revoir, Rosa, said Bond. Farewell, Mr. Bond. The boot with its tiny steel tongue flashed out. Bond felt a sharp pain in his right calf. It was only the sort of pain you would get from a kick. He flinched and stepped back. The two men seized Rosa Klebb by the arms. Mathis laughed. My poor James, he said, count on Smirsh to have the last word. The tongue of dirty steel had withdrawn into the leather. Now it was only a harmless bundle of old woman that was being lifted into the basket. They literally put her in a laundry basket, I think, so they can ship her secretly. Mathis watched the lid being secured. He turned to Bond. It's a good day's work you've done, my friend, but you look tired. Oh, he's poisoned. Go back to the embassy and have a rest, because this evening we must have dinner together, the best dinner in Paris. So so he thinks that he's just been stabbed. He doesn't realize he's poisoned.
Like, oh, you're fine.
Yeah, the best dinner in Paris, and I will find the loveliest girl to go with it. Not Vesper, though. Remember, she died on her last adventure. Numbness was creeping up Bond's body. He felt very cold. He lifted his hand to brush back the comma of hair over his right eyebrow. He's always got like a Superman comma of hair. He felt very cold, blah, blah, blah. There was no feeling in his fingers. They seemed as big as cucumbers. His hand fell heavily to his side. Breathing became difficult. Bond sighed to the depths of his lungs. He clenched his jaws and half closed his eyes, as people do when they want to hide their drunkenness. Through his eyelashes, he watched the basket being carried to the door. He prized it, so she doesn't die. He prized his eyes open. Desperately, he focused Mathis. I shan't need a girl, Renee, he said thickly. Now he had to gasp for breath. Again, his hand moved upward, moved up towards his cold face. He had an impression of Mathis starting towards him. Bond felt his knees begin to buckle. He said, or thought he said, "I've already got the loveliest ... aka an ellipsis." That's a Casino Royale reference. Bond pivoted slowly on his heel and crashed headlong to the wine-red floor. The end. It's literally the end. Is Bond just passing out?
So then how's this start? How does Dr. No start up? Is it start
Dr.
up?
No, I think is so Dr. No starts with the Queen's Club and the Chingros or the Chigros, who are black Chinese people, and the three blind mice essentially taking out Strangways.
So it doesn't start out. Well, I was wondering
And
if
then
it starts right after
then it
moves off or
starts
whatever.
with its choice of weapons, and I think it's just Bond shooting.
So we don't see like a recovery and all that.
No, it's just like
that's weird.
he's back in action.
they refer to it though, like
Okay.
it's like I think at some point it's like, how are you? After,
Remember that time you almost died?
Yeah,
So-
where Rosa Klebb, thought she got you, but what an odd, it's like, I guess it's a cliffhanger, but
Yeah.
it just ends,
Yeah. So then you said, okay, so we talked about Dr. No, and then Goldfinger is, I think you mentioned it last time, how how Goldfinger gets it, didn't you? How did Goldfinger dies? Because it's not, is he in the airplane?
Yeah, and it's fun. Just for the record, I know I could find it, but I know somewhere in here it's like, so Bond, how are you after that poison? Like it's referred to,
Okay.
but it's just no big deal. It's just kind of brushed off. It's not like the most significant difference between the books is by far the opening of The Man with the Golden Gun. Like,
Sorry,
that's
we
a
have
major carryover.
An
go ahead.
unknown cake lover comment is in Dr. No, I think someone asked M what happened to Rosa Klebb, to which he replies, "Oh, she died." So Goldfinger, is it the same? It's the same for the most part, right? But except for we talked about in the episode how they swapped it, so he's not stealing the gold; he's destroying the gold.
So yeah, and they go through. It's very different. The laser scene
It's a buzzsaw.
is a buzzsaw, and the whole thing is that him and it's Masterton, not Masterson. Tilly Masterton. They kind of, that stuff is similar, but then they infiltrate. I think they're taken by Oddjob. There's no like supercar. There's none of that, right? Because Q isn't a thing. I think he has the car though, but
he has the
but that's-
DB3. I do remember
Exactly.
reading that.
But
he
it's not
he
like-
doesn't have the DB5
and no
it's
super
the
chase and all that.
but it is an Aston Martin, and it's the DB3, which is like the model that predated that one.
And I think he does take out her car in the same way. I can't remember if he does it in super spy fashion or if he just runs into her. But either way, he's wise to her, and so he's like, I think he takes her out. God, I try to watch the movies as much as possible to do the show, so it's like it slowly.
So you're mixing
bleeds back in.
everything.
Yeah,
Like,
it keeps mixing back in. But either way, same thing happens where he takes out her car, and he's fantasizing about having a relationship with her as he's driving, and he's like, again, just like in the movie, he's like, discipline, you're on a mission. But he's like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we got in a horrible car accident, we got dinner, and we made love and all that, and then it happens, I guess. But or like more or less, yeah, exactly. And so then, but anyway, like none of that matters. What matters is that they go to the compound, Goldfinger's compound, and they're taken without the whole chase. They're just taken, and he has to try to convince Goldfinger that he's like, it's not the whole I know about Grand Slam. It becomes, we're useful for you. You should hire us. You need to hire us to whatever you're doing. We can help you. So Goldfinger's like, yeah, I guess I could use you. So what he does is they go to New York, they fly to America, and he just essentially puts him in a hotel room and has Oddjob guard them. And they become like movie producers. They're just in there working. They're just doing paperwork to help Operation Grand Slam happen. So they're working for Goldfinger. You can see why they changed all this, of course.
Yeah.
And then they have the whole meeting with all the gangsters, right? All the mafia folks show up, including Pussy Galore. And Pussy Galore is full-blown lesbian. There's no hiding it. Again, we talked about that in that episode where it was like, where's the proof? Well, in the novel, that's where it comes from, just like with Wint and Kid. And then
to clarify,
I had to set all that up so that what happens is, just like in the movie, Felix, like I think he gets a message to Felix, and so Grand Slam is going through, and they had set up. I think he was going to gas the population in that same manner. It's funny. We were just going to read excerpts, and now we're retelling all the novels, like it's a test for me. So they do that whole thing where they manage to switch out the gas. They put in all these fake people, like Felix lines all this up, where it's like there are just people laying around, actors, right, and military people, and right when they start executing Grand Slam, all the Marines pop up and start fighting, including Felix Leiter, and Goldfinger gets away, and then later on, Bond is in the airport to go home, and they're like, you need to get a vaccination. You need to get a vaccination to go on this flight. And so it ends up being whoever, like somebody shoots him up, and then he wakes up on the flight, and it's Goldfinger and everybody who had survived. And he just gets a note from Pussy Galore that just says, "I'm with you." And I remember being like, "What?" And she's like, "I'm on your side now. I'm going to help you with this." And so he's like, "Okay." And then I think if I remember correctly, I probably sent you guys some Marco Polos about this. I wish I could cut those.
I do remember. I kind of vaguely remember you talking about this.
Because what I was complaining about was, I was like, she says, "I'm going to help you," and then she literally does nothing. Like, she doesn't do anything. I think Bond gets himself out of the situation, and she doesn't do a goddamn thing. And then
she just meant,
suddenly,
"I'm not against you anymore."
Like, literally all she does is this, and I'm going to skip over Goldfinger's death for a moment. Literally all she does is switch teams to fuck Bond at the end. And she's literally like, "You're not really going to send me to prison, are you?" And he's like, "It depends on how hard you suck my balls." Like, it's just, it's like, that's all she does.
Gosh.
But she says, I probably highlighted it because it's hilarious. She says something like, he's like, "I thought you were a fucking lesbian," and she's like, "I've never met such a man. I just needed a man." Like, it's just,
wow.
It's ridiculous. It's just in the sense that, all she had to do was anything, and she literally just says, I'm on your side now, and then doesn't help him at all. And all she had to do was like get him out of the chair. I think he's like duct taped or something. So, but the whole odd job thing is, remember Goldfinger gets sucked out in the movie. That's what he does that to Odd Job. He manages to.
So Odd Job doesn't like get electrified like he does in the film.
No. So this is what happens. He manages to like, I don't know, he's got like a pencil or something. However he does it, he breaks Odd Job's window, and Odd Job gets sucked out. And then the plane, is depressurizing. And then that's when Goldfinger runs up, and Bond has managed to get out of his restraints, and he just chokes the fucking life out of Goldfinger. That's how he dies.
That's
and then
cool.
they crash land into the ocean by like an aircraft carrier, some ship, and then they're recovered, and then he bangs Pussy Galore.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah. Very cool.
Very cool. Very different. Hold on. So we talked about Goldfinger. I will skip.
Let me read the quotes getting up to that.
Okay.
So we don't. So I think we were on Goldfinger because now I'm trying to find where I was. Okay. It's part of his profession to kill people. Did I read that? No. So this is the opening to Goldfinger, chapter 1. And Goldfinger's I think same thing. He's just like, but not really. I think he's leaving Mexican, and Mexican. He just had a mission in Mexico. Remember, that's how the movie opens up, as he's in South America somewhere, Central or South America, on a mission. And then this is it says the chapter is called Reflections in a Double Bourbon. James Bond, with 2 double bourbons inside him, sat in the final departure lounge of Miami Airport and thought about life and death. It was part of his profession to kill people. He had never liked doing it. And people have said that to us in the comments, like, Bond doesn't like killing, but he does it. And yeah, and like we talked about that when Bond killing in Cold Blood. He does that in Dr. No. He doesn't really ever do it otherwise. But this is where it's expressed. It was part of his profession to kill people. He had never liked doing it, and when he had to kill, he did it as well as he knew how and forgot about it. As a secret agent who held the rare 00 prefix, the license to kill in the Secret Service, it was his duty to be as cool about death as a surgeon. If it happened, it happened. Regret was unprofessional. Worse, it was Death Watch. It was Death Watch beetle in the soul. So again, I'm trying to highlight certain things that, like rare glimpses into Bond's mind. Not rare, but like things you don't get in the movies. And then I just I guess the libertarian in me highlighted this. Prohibition is the trigger of crime. Moving on. This is still Goldfinger. Bond's lips turned down. Cut it out. Stop being so damn morbid. All this is just reaction from a dirty assignment. You're stale, tired of having to be tough. You want to change. You've seen too much death. You want a slice of life. Easy, soft, high. I don't know what the hell's going on here.
Kate Clever has a request when you get to it. He
says,
go ahead. He thinks you should read what she says just after that sentence. It's on the last page or 2 of Goldfinger.
I think you should read
referring to she just needed a man.
Yeah. I'm sure I highlighted it.
Yeah, I'm sure
guaranteed I highlighted it because I was cracking up. If I didn't, I'd be embarrassed. And some of these, I always have to double check that I highlighted enough because iBooks has bugs. It has bugs. I'm not even going to look into the rest of that line because I don't know what was going on there. No wonder the neat card inside Bond's wardrobe had said that the cost of the Aloha suite was $200 a day. Bond made a rough calculation. If he was paying the bill, it would take him just 3 weeks to spend his whole salary for the year. Bond smiled cheerfully to himself. He went back into the bedroom, picked up the telephone, and ordered himself a delicious, wasteful breakfast, a carton of king-size Chesterfields in the newspaper. So what's happening
is what we were talking about back then. With
exactly,
he lives it up when he's on the job.
But this, though, he's not on the job. What happens is that when he's at that this is the opening of Goldfinger. When he's in that terminal, this guy comes up. He's like, "I remember you. I was there at Casino Royale. I was sitting at the table with you with my wife." If you go back to the book, there's this couple. There's this American couple, and he's talking about them like, oh, they're just like these rich people who are here, and like here I am on this mission. The guy's like, I remember you, and you're a badass, and I have a problem. There's a guy at my hotel cheating at cards, and I need you to look into it. And so, there's none of that Felix Leiter showing up or whatever. It's just this guy's like, how about you? Because I think he's waiting to leave Miami and the flight is canceled. And the guy's like, well, you're here. This is fate, James Bond. We were at Casino Royale together. And if you look into this for me, I'll hook you up. So that excerpt is Bond just being like, man, if I had to pay for this hotel myself, I'd be bankrupt in no time. So he's living it up. And again, this is the second time that before it was M that asked him to look into Hugo Drax about cheating at cards. So then it's much the same at that point. It's pretty much verbatim how he catches Goldfinger there.
Is there anything in the books about what James did before becoming a 00? Was he
a used car salesman?
Like really good at gambling? They were like, yeah, that skill might come in handy as a 00.
It may be in the section about like, okay, the only thing, again, and You'll Only Live Twice, his obituary talks a lot about his schooling. And there's nothing other than that. So I think it's much like him and Alec talk about, like they're kind of handpicked.
Yeah.
They're both orphans because orphans make good agents because they have no attachments. On the first night, the girl had brought him tea. Bond had looked at her severely. I don't drink tea. I hate it. It's mud. Moreover, it's one of the main reasons for the downfall of the British Empire. Be a good girl and make me some coffee. The girl had giggled and scurried off to spread Bond's dictum in the canteen. From then on, he had got his coffee. The expression, a cup of mud, was seeping through the building. I think this may be MI6. But anyway, so he goes, once he screws over Goldfinger, then he goes back to MI6, and then that's when M puts him on this assignment. He's like, "Sir, I just met this guy. I just met this Goldfinger guy when I was delayed." So that's one of those, like, we would have said that's a bit of a plot convenience, but maybe it's just a twist of fate. But again, it's easier to get away with that stuff in the books, obviously, because you can explain things away a little easier. But yeah, Bond hates tea. Okay.
How un-British of him.
Right. Merkin. Bond had taken her to the station and kissed her once hard on the lips and had gone away. It hadn't been love, but a quotation had come into Bond's mind as his cab moved out of Pennsylvania Station. Some love is fire, some love is rust, but the finest, cleanest love is lust. Neither had had regrets. Had they committed a sin? If so, which one? A sin against chastity? Bond smiled to himself. There was a quotation for that too, and from a saint, St. Augustine. "Oh Lord, give me chastity, but don't give it yet." Is this A Spy Who Loved Me? No, that's Jill Masterton. Okay. That's Jill Masterton. So, I can't remember. Did they bang? Oh, no. Oh, okay. Sorry. This isn't Tilly. This is Jill. So he, it's so much more like, okay, we're all so desensitized because we've watched so many movies, of course. So it's like, oh, of course Goldfinger's just going to murder her, right? Because it's quick, but it's none of that really happens. Like, he takes the photo of so he goes into, and he finds Jill because he's like, Bond sits with Goldfinger for a bit and the guy that he's playing cards with, and he just kind of plays dumb, plays the businessman, and then the guy he's playing cards with, I think, is actually the guy he's helping. But anyway, so he Bond puts together what's happening. He's like, oh, there's got to be somebody over there. He goes and he finds Jill, and then he takes a photo, and then that's when he says, Goldfinger, I'm going to show this to the FBI or something. Like, the FBI would be very interested in this, and he just thinks he's done. And then Jill, I think Jill goes home with Goldfinger because she's like an intern or something, and she's like, "Yeah, Mr. Goldfinger would never do anything to me." And then I think only later he finds out that something bad happened to her. But he essentially, he just, oh shit. So he's like, and I'm going to take this girl with me. I think that's the case. I think that he jumps on a train with Jill, and they just kind of bang their whole way somewhere. And then Goldfinger's pissed off about all of this. And so I think eventually he finds out from Tilly that she'd been killed. But it's like, in the movie, obviously he just takes her out and we're like, oh, of course that's what you would do. But like in real life, it's not as immediately violent, it's a little more subtle. So, but yeah, he has a good old time with her. And then that whole thing where it's like, did we commit some sin? I don't know. It was great. Anyway, moving on. And Bond reflected while Goldfinger was okay. So this is where the Russians come in. Is Goldfinger, where they didn't have Spectre at all in the book? He is working for the Russians. His smuggling activities are financing the Russians, and I think Smersh. And Bond reflected while Goldfinger was pumping 1 million, 2 million pounds a year into the bloody maw of Smersh, he was pyramiding his reserves, working on them, making them work for him whenever the odds were right, piling up the surplus for the day when the trumpets would sound in the Kremlin and every golden sinew would be mobilized. And no one outside Moscow had been watching the process. No one suspected that Goldfinger, the jeweler, the metallurgist, the resident of Reculverin, the respected member of Blades, of the Royal... Blades is where Bond goes to gamble a lot, and M goes to gamble a lot. Or specifically M, because it's like wealthy types. Blades, of the Royal St. Mark's at Sandwich, was one of the greatest conspirators of all time. That he had financed the murder of hundreds, perhaps thousands of victims of Smersh all over the world. So what's happening here is that what Bond is putting together, because again, it's just like what we talked about, our high praise for Goldfinger in the film is all vocalized in the novel, where Bond kind of starts falling in love with Goldfinger. Like he's like, this dude is off the hizzy. He's awesome. He is so secretly genius that I think I have a man crush on him. Again, these are Bond's thoughts, not me.
Secret genius.
Yeah, because and what specifically what he's talking about here is that he opened up all these jewelry shops where he was slowly buying up gold. People would come in with lockets and whatever, just like trinkets, and he's slowly buying it all up and then getting it out of Britain. So he's screwing up the British and funneling money for secret Smersh operations all over the world, and making like he said 1 million, 2 million pounds a year. So he's like, this dude is diabolical. This dude is awesome, and they play golf, and you play all 18 rounds or holes. Anyway, okay, Smersh, smeared spionum, death despised, the murder of a parrot of the High Presidium. And only M suspected it. Only Bond knew it. So again, it's M who's like, something's up with, like, there's gold being, dropping. It might be this guy Goldfinger, and Bond's like, I just met Goldfinger. It's kind of odd, but that's what it is. And here, so only M suspected it, and only Bond knew it. So Bond's like, I'm the only person on the planet who knows that this is happening. And here was Bond launched against this man by a series of flukes, a train of coincidences that had been... This is what I was saying. You can justify a novel with this. A series of flukes, a train of coincidence that had been started by a plane breaking down on the other side of the world. Bond smiled grimly to himself. How often in his profession had it been the same? The tiny acorn of coincidence that soared into the mighty oak, whose branches darkened the sky. And now, once again, he was setting out to bring the dreadful growth down. With what? A bag of golf clubs? Oh, it's a fun scene, too. It's like, it's riveting. And then, we just get like a taste of it. Okay. So here you go. Bond looked at the man in deep awe, and only 2 nights ago, he, Bond, had been working on his manual of unarmed combat. There was nothing, absolutely nothing in all his reading, all his experience to approach what he had just witnessed. This was not a man of flesh and blood. This was a living club, perhaps the most dangerous animal on the face of the earth. Who do you think he's talking about?
Red Grant?
Bond had to do it.
What?
Had
We're
to
in
give
Odd
homage. Odd Job, yeah.
Yeah.
Bond had to do it, had to give homage to this uniquely dreadful person. He held out his hand. Softly, Odd Job. Goldfinger's voice was the crack of the whip, or a crack of a whip. Because if he shook his hand, he'd break it. So he's like, shake his hand softly, Odd Job.
Is Odd Job a short statured guy in the books, or
He's,
is he?
I believe he's Korean. He's Odd Job as we know.
Oh.
But he
Hat
instead
and all?
of the the hat thing is real. But when he remember when he does the whole I own the club, and he's like
I own the club.
Odd Job, and he has him throw it at the statue. That whole thing is done in because Goldfinger invites him again. What's fun about the novel and where it's similar to the film, but there's so much more of it, is that him and Bond are playing this game for the longest time where they're they're like aware that the other one is not who he says he is. And it's like take everything we praised about the film and just expand it out significantly. So at one point, Goldfinger invites Bond to his house, and then Goldfinger immediately leaves. So Bond's just there, and he's like, I should start snooping around, but like, what if he's watching me somehow? What if he'll know? So Bond starts walking around, and eventually he does realize there's a series of cameras watching him, and he finds them, and all this film is being developed, and he's like, "Oh God, what do I do?" So he just tosses out all the film and throws a cat on top of it, and then goes back down and pretends like nothing happened, and then it's like Goldfinger goes up to check it and sees it, and so then it's like, okay, wait, do I believe that this cat got into my bedroom and exposed all this film? Or, it's like they're constantly playing this game, and it's awesome. And then he takes the cat, and he's just sitting there petting it, and he's like, let me show you what my guy Oddjob can do, just so you don't do any more of this bullshit. And he's like, Oddjob, and Oddjob like takes his jacket off and his hat, and he like flip kicks the mantelpiece, which is a big wood beam, and just breaks it. And then he just starts smashing shit, and Bond's like, and that's when he says that. So that's when he says, this is like the greatest weapon God ever placed on earth, like Bond's just in awe of Oddjob. And then he says, here, Goldfinger took the cat from under his arm and tossed it to the Korean, who caught it eagerly. I'm tired of seeing this animal around. You may have it for dinner. The Korean's eyes gleamed. And tell them in the kitchen that we will have our dinner at once. So then him and Bond, he's like, hey, Oddjob, eat this cat, and then him and Bond sit down to dinner. It's wild. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I think like Dr. No, like From Russia with Love is pretty straightforward, other than the fact that Red Grant doesn't cease being awesome. Dr. No stands out as something awesome. Goldfinger certainly stands out as something awesome. I think I enjoyed reading those more than anything else. And then, I think You Only Live Twice is on that as well. I read that about the cat. And this is Goldfinger still. There must be a whole lot of them going up together. Would Tilly be on the same trip? Bond squirmed with embarrassment. How would he introduce her to the others? To Vesper, for instance. So Bond thinks he's dead. Bond is he thinks he's dead. Remember in Man with the Golden Gun when he's like, heaven, definitely heaven. So he's thinking, how is he going to explain Tilly to Vesper? And when it came to the point, which would he like the best? But perhaps it would be a big place with countries and towns. There was probably no more reason why he should run into one of his former girlfriends here than there had been on Earth. But still, there were a lot of people he'd better avoid until he had got settled in and found out the form. Perhaps, with so much love about, these things wouldn't matter. Perhaps one just loved all the girls one met. Tricky business. So Bond's version of heaven is that all the women he's ever banged are just hanging out with him in peace.
Aw, that's kind of sweet.
Very Bond. Very Bond. Okay. Which, yeah, I mean, sounds good to me. Bond came to the conclusion that Tilly Masterton was one of those girls, which it's interesting that Masterton became Masterson. Like, it makes sense. It's such an, it's interesting that they would just go ahead and do that. Obviously, Masterson's easier to say. Bond came to the conclusion that Tilly Masterton was one of those girls whose hormones had got mixed up. He knew the type well and thought they and their male counterparts were a direct consequence of giving votes to women and sex equality. As a result of 50 years of emancipation, feminine qualities were dying out or being transferred to the males. What did I say about Bond being red pill as fuck? Pansies of both sexes were everywhere, not yet completely homosexual, but confused, not knowing what they were. The result was a herd of unhappy sexual misfits, barren and full of frustrations. The women wanting to dominate and the men to be nannied. He was sorry for them, but he had no time for them. Bond smiled sourly to himself as he remembered his fantasies about this girl as they sped along the valley of the Loire. Entre deux signes indeed. I think it's because Tilly and Pussy Galore suddenly have eyes for each other, and Bond's like, fuck both of you. This is bullshit. Like, he's essentially stuck in a hotel room with he's just surrounded by lesbians, and he's like, this is awful. But yeah, they're just working for Goldfinger. And Goldfinger is like, I don't trust you. I know you're smart though, so I'm going to let you live and you're going to help me with this stuff. I didn't highlight this, but it's right here. Bond decides to just take a chance, and he writes on a piece of paper. He just says, urgent and vital. Reward of $5,000 is guaranteed with no questions asked to the finder who delivers this message unopened to Felix Leiter, Care, Pinkerton's Detective Agency, 154 Nassau Street, New York City. Immediate cash on delivery. Bond rolled this message around the cylinder, wrote $5,000 reward in red ink on the outside, and stuck the little package down the center of 3 inches of Scotch tape. Then he sat down again on the edge of the bed and carefully strapped the free ends of the Scotch tape down the inside of his thigh. And then ultimately he puts it on a plane. He puts it in the toilet of a plane that they're on. And he's just like, hopefully the cleaning crew comes in and they see this, and Pussy Galore doesn't see it while she's taking a shit.
Interesting plan.
But yeah, that's his thought. When basically Tilly's like, Bond's like, so we're stuck in this hotel room. We could, and she's like, no, and Bond's like, I'm one of these feminists. Yeah, I know your type. Your sister put out on the train. Your sister was much better than you, Tilly. Anyway, but never the death of common humanity in one of the partners. I've thought about this, and I've invented a rather high-sounding title for this basic factor in human relations. I have called it the law of the quantum of solace. Okay, so we're on quantum of solace, which means I'm going to backtrack to the end of Goldfinger. Let's do that.
Yeah, we gotta get
apparently instead of highlighting it, I was Marco Poloing you guys and laughing my ass off because I was like, McCurdy, you were right. You were totally right. They're Pussy Galore is a lesbian in the book. And then in the movie again, I was like, all she does is just reject Goldfinger. Why does that make her a lesbian?
It's not, but I was trying to explain to you that like back then a lot of stuff was not said. So
totally. I mean, which I understand.
Like you've always heard, especially with like homosexuality in older movies for the longest time, because you didn't put that in a movie, and if you wanted to hide it, you had to hide it. So if you hinted at something like that, it was usually things like you had a man touching another man's shoulder for lingering too long, or just the way that a character.
My whole thing was that if Goldfinger wasn't a fat slob,
with Pussy Galore, with the case with Pussy Galore, it was the fact that you have a bunch of these women who are dressed, who aren't wearing dresses, that are wearing pants, and this is the 1960s. And that was my whole point when we were talking about that episode, and you were just like, no, she's not, she's no way. And
well, my whole point was just that, if they rejecting Goldfinger is something the straightest woman on the planet would do. So that wasn't enough evidence for me.
But why does she need to be with Goldfinger? Is he
kind of sloppy in the book?
No, wait, what do you mean? Why does she have to be with Goldfinger?
Yeah, but you're saying, it sounds like you're saying, oh, well, she would have had to.
I'm saying rejecting Goldfinger doesn't make you a lesbian.
It
makes you smart.
Wow.
No,
but I was you were saying that, but I was like, no, it's about the things and how they dress the characters and all that stuff. So.
I think they really hinted at it with the flying circus, because that doesn't exist. And I think something like that may have been in her backstory, but
it wasn't in.
Or it could be. I mean, I think her gang is all women. Like Pussy Galore has her own gang. So but I don't think they were pilots. Again, I could be wrong. I've watched Goldfinger so many times since reading the book. So this is the end of the book. Yeah, here it is. Bond said firmly, "Lock that door, pussy. Take off that sweater and come to bed. You'll catch a cold." She did as she was told, like an obedient child. She lay in the crook of Bond's arm and looked up at him. She said, not in a gangster's voice or a lesbian's, but in a girl's voice. "Will you write to me in Sing Sing?" For anybody who doesn't know, Sing Sing is a prison. Bond looked down into the deep blue-violet eyes that were no longer hard and imperious. He bent and kissed them lightly. He said, "They told me you only liked women." She said, I've never met a man before." The toughness came back into her voice. "I come from the South. You know the definition of a virgin down there. Well, it's a girl who can run faster than her brother." How did I not highlight this? I know I read this to you guys. Let me read that again. "I come from the South. You know the definition of virgin down there? Well, it's a girl who can run faster than her brother. In my case, I couldn't run as fast as my uncle."
Oh my god.
I was 12. Oh, it's so terrible. That's not so good, James. You ought to be able to guess that. So let's just say she has some damage. Bond smiled down into the pale, beautiful face. He said, "All you need is a course of TLC." What's TLC? Short for tender, loving care treatment. It's what they write on most papers when a waif gets brought into a children's clinic. "I'd like that." She looked at the passionate, rather cruel, again, always referring to Bond as cruel, Fleming is, rather cruel mouth waiting above hers. She reached up and brushed back the comma of black hair, like Superman, that had fallen over his right eyebrow. She looked into that fiercely slitted gray eyes. "When's it going to start?" Bond's right hand came slowly up the firm, muscled thighs, over the flat, soft plane of the stomach, to the right breast. Its point was hard with desire. He said softly, "Now." His mouth came ruthlessly down on hers. So yeah, she'd never met a man before. She liked Tilly Masterton, that's for sure. Okay, so
She met her uncle.
so right after that comes the short story collection From a View to a Kill, For Your Eyes Only, Quantum of Solace, Risico, and the Hildebrand Rarity.
Hildebrand.
I didn't highlight anything from a View to a Kill. It has nothing to do with the book. Remember, the movie is just a Goldfinger remake. Well, not just, but it's roughly a Goldfinger remake with Silicon Valley and all that. None of that. And it's kind of cool, but it's not enough to make a movie about, of course. It's all it has to do with these motorcycle dispatch carriers are being gunned down and their dispatches are being taken. And so Bond figures out what's happening. And I can tell you the whole story if you want, but that's it. And it's very short. It's extremely short. It is a short story. But what the next highlight I had goes right into Quantum of Solace. And Quantum of Solace is absolutely the oddball of all of this. It's just a guy telling another guy a story, and then it turns out that the guy hearing the story is Bond, and all it is about these two people with a horrible marriage, and how I think she kind of wants to like get a divorce so she can bang a bunch of guys, and like that's it. But never the death of common humanity in one of the partners. Okay, wait. Incurable disease, blindness, disaster, all these can be overcome, but never the death of common humanity in one of the partners. He's talking about divorce. I've thought about this, and I've invented a rather high-sounding title for this basic factor in human relations. I have called it the Law of the Quantum of Solace. Bond said, "That's a splendid name for it. It's certainly impressive enough." I'm waiting to be impressed. And of course, I see what you mean. I should say you're absolutely right. Quantum of Solace, the amount of comfort. Yeah, there's not too much more to say about Quantum of Solace, but that's just from that name. You know,
Guess where Quantum of Solace was first published?
Playboy.
No, Cosmo.
Really?
Yeah.
They planted that seed of divorce in the West pretty heavy. Even Fleming had a hand in it. But that's it. It's just about a bad marriage. And so it's just such an odd. It's like Fleming wrote it and then later just said, how about the guy is Bond? Like he probably wrote it and then retconned it to be a Bond story.
So what I'm reading here is that it was based off a story that was told to Fleming by his neighbor and lover Blanche Blackwell, and about a real life police inspector Fleming portrayed as a civil servant Philip Masterton.
There you go, Masters.
So Fleming, Brenda Blackwell. Yeah, so it's, I mean, yeah, it sounds like a story that he heard, and obviously he wanted to keep the whole James Bond thing going, so he included that into it.
Here's a very short one. Bond had no intention of marrying anyone. If he did, it would certainly not be an insipid slave. So there you go. That's his attraction to Tracy. Because he already has May. His favorite woman on the planet is May, who's his housekeeper. She makes him bacon and eggs. And he just,
That's all he
she's
needs.
Scottish. He calls her like the Scottish treasure or something like that. He's always referring to her as a treasure. It struck Bond. Okay, here you go. Here's Columbo. It struck Bond that Columbo had made a good life for himself, a life of adventure and thrill and risk. It was a criminal life, a running fight with the currency laws, the state tobacco monopoly, the customs, the police. But there was a whiff of adolescent rascality in the air, which somehow changed the color of the crime from black to white, or at least to gray. So again, it's like, I smuggle gold, diamonds, but no heroin.
No heroin.
It's like he's the thief of the heart of gold.
No heroin.
No heroin. And it's the same thing there. It's like Cristado. It's like, you should kill that guy Columbo. And that you guys falling asleep.
I'm just shutting down.
What are we at? We're at
So we have the robes on, right?
we just hit an hour 37. We just hit exactly how long we went last time. So you guys wanna
Well, what do we have for books left? You said we're just
There's
in
a
the
lot.
short stories section. Oh, we still have a lot.
So there are two. It's like you have.
We're like halfway through.
You have like 6 books, and then you have a short story collection, and then you have 6 books and another short story collection.
Because remember when we talked about, like I said this last time, but remember, For Your Eyes Only was intended, at least from what I remember, was intended to be Fleming wanted to write like a TV show for James Bond, and so he had started coming up with stories for that television show after the CBS thing had happened.
Each short story would be an episode of
the TV show, and so it would just be like, oh well, let's just put James Bond in this short story, this thing that happens. And it's funny because like I mentioned like Philip Marlowe or like Mike Hammer before. Mike Hammer's another, like, he was a private detective, PI type detective stories. But they I mean, by the 70s, I think there was a television, or 70s or 80s, there was a television show that was kind of the same vein, where you just have that character and then you would do adventures each week. But yeah, he wrote those stories, or that was at least the idea. And then the next book after that is Thunderball, which we all know.
Was Fleming like pitching stuff, or were people talking to him already? Like,
well, we talked about
the books. There's a quick turnaround from him writing the books to them being picked up and turned.
So the first movie, remember, the first movie comes out in 1962. That's the same year that The Spy Who Loved Me came out.
Okay,
right?
and I looked.
So that would have been like a year before. So 1961 is probably when they were filming Dr. No, and then the prior year before that, that was probably when they were making all these deals and stuff. So the first book's written in 1953. That first teleplay came out a year later in 1954. So then, he had been gaining some success. He had Casino Royale, Live and Let Die, Moonraker, Diamonds Are Forever, From Russia with Love, Dr. No. and so on. And then that's when, and we talked about this when we did our Thunderball episode, was basically Kevin McClory came to him with, it was Kevin McClory and another guy that he kind of met at a party. I don't know, it's just a huge convoluted story, but they met him and he was already talking about like, oh, well, we should write a screenplay specifically as a James Bond film. Because again, like as Charlie's describing a lot of these books, they don't have that Hollywood flair that you would want in a, like some of them are just so straightforward, and sometimes they're not, but sometimes they're very grounded. So I think they were thinking, oh, let's try to make something a little more with a little bit more of that cinematic flair. So then they started developing the screenplay and got really drunk one night. I mean, they got drunk at GoldenEye, and then no one knows who came up with what idea. Because, like, you know, even at one point, Fleming's like, I came up with Blofeld, and McClory's like, no, I came up with Blofeld, and he's like, no, I came up with the name Blofeld because it's a guy I know. His name's Blofeld. So, and then Fleming just decided to just be like, okay, I guess we're not doing a movie with this. I guess I'm gonna just write this into a book. So he writes it into a book, and then the rest is history. That causes a bunch of stuff. But yeah, like that was the idea. Was like they were gonna, and then remember Kevin,
like I said before, he's a
film producer.
Kevin, I came up with all of this, all of this, and then you walk in with one bad guy, and you want to own all my style. Like it just, you can't put it any better way than he's a real life Bond villain. He is a
and there's another guy.
Villain.
There was a third guy. There's a third guy who's tied to this too, Jack Winningham. So they were all writing this story together that would eventually introduce Spectre, it introduced Blofeld, and you know, it was supposed to be like this kind of cool caper type thing. I still enjoy, I mean, you know, going back and watching the movie, I still enjoy that movie. They call it like the first of the Blofeld trilogy, is when all that stuff happens. So yeah, you know, that's but yeah, that's how kind of all that drama within the franchise happens, and we will still talk about it when we do later episodes on this show.
Were the Bond books a massive hit, or was Ian Fleming like an already well-known person? It's just,
I'd have to go back.
Surprising how fast it cut traction. It seems
a lot of the books have, you know how books in general will have like the quotes that are high praise. Like Oprah said she loved it. There are a lot of those, and I highlighted a few that I'll read at some point. But one of the ones that stands out is like something like Ian Fleming's character James Bond is the type of man every man wants to be, and the type of man every woman wants between her sheets. And then there's other things that are like, Fleming is great. Fleming, like, he nails it again, you know? So maybe, but you never know. You never know if that's just like cherry picking critics. But because I think McCurdy said at one point, it was like, these books, nobody really held them in high regard. And so my expectations were kind of low, but I've really enjoyed them. So,
well, I mean, I think they weren't held in high regard as like classic literature, and like
totally
when you look at I'm comparing the James Bond stories to something like Raymond Chandler's stories or Mickey Spillane's stories, where they were these basically like kind of pulp story novel type things where, you know, writers were paid basically by the word, so they'd just write all sorts of shit. And you know, they were crime stories, and they were all like these action things, and they were things that would be more, I don't want to say like comic books, but like they were geared towards men as far as like, because I mean, think about it, James Bond's geared towards men as far as, you know, sex, action, all that stuff.
I think it was Hildebrand Rarity was put in Playboy. That was published in Playboy.
So all the things that you know, we all would be like, oh, this is so cool, you know, like those were the kinds of that's kind of where these books were held in
male.
So they weren't
fantasy.
Like I mean, yeah, they're male fantasy books, so they're not. They weren't. Yeah, there's not high art. They were definitely like lowbrow in a way.
And that's,
but
I mean, in the movies too. The movies are obviously male fantasy, and that's why I always jump on my high horse of let Bond be Bond. Whenever it's like, it's wrong that he's having sex with women. It's like the whole point of it is to, you know, it's like trying to strip the romance out of stupid Twilight movies or something. It's like that's what we're here for.
Like,
Is
he's
the
He-Man.
male fantasy. And then when the moment, it's like the same thing happens every time. It's like let's weaken Bond so that people aren't offended, and then the movies aren't as popular. The Dalton movies just aren't as popular. The least popular videos of ours have been the Dalton ones, because I think people just aren't seeking them out as much. The Living Daylights has performed horribly. License to Kill, not that great. And then like Moonraker is the most sought out episode, because I think people just love that movie, and Bond's just being Bond in that movie.
I think with
so
Dalton,
it does
though,
this.
it's like,
It does this, right? So
Yeah.
so with Dalton it goes like this, and then with GoldenEye it goes back up like that, and then with that got goofy, and then with Casino Royale they let Craig do his thing, and then by the end of Craig they once again don't want to offend anybody, and so it's like
I think
is no longer
when we get to
Bond.
Craig, I think there's more that's going on than
There's
just,
there's
like,
some
they didn't want to
there's
offend
some
people.
caveats.
There's a lot. Each film is its own, like, oh well, we want to do this, but this is popular, but like it's a stop and start kind of situation with, I think, the Craig films in particular. But I think we'll get into that when we get.
But Bond is with today's hottest woman, and he's like, it was great working with you. Good night now. It's like,
but it works.
Bond's not being Bond. That's my point. And I don't care. Like the marriage thing weighs in not marriage, but like the kid and the wife to be Miss White, Madeline Swan. That stuff weighs in. But all in all, my point being that when Bond stops being Bond, the movies aren't as they don't pack as much of a punch, and people don't care as much because they're trying to not offend anybody. And then eventually they're like, let's just do it right. And then it's a huge hit and everybody's eyes are on it. I mean, I've painted this picture before, my concept of mass attention degeneration, which dictates that when something doesn't have a lot of eyeballs on it, it's allowed to be its thing. And that I've coined that. That's mine. Mass attention degeneration is mine. Shut up. It's mine.
Put it in the comment section.
I wrote a book on this. We'll get into that later. I'll put Amazon affiliate links to my book. Exactly. Yeah. The hat comes back. MAD, madness. When the world's eyeballs are on something, it affects the way it's made. Like, look at Star Wars Episode 8. It's like everybody had their theories. Everybody was trying to say, I think this is going to happen. I think that's going to happen. And that affected the decisions Rian Johnson made. And he made horrible decisions from that. When something is below the radar, like when the Bond team takes a break for 6 years and nobody cares anymore, and they're allowed to just make GoldenEye however they want, it's awesome. And then the same thing happened with Casino Royale. Everybody thought it was going to be terrible because they all hated Daniel Craig, and if anything, that actually is a reverse example where that spurred him on to be a badass. But point being that it's a big hit, and everybody's eyeballs are on it, and those eyeballs change what it turns into. They make it worse because they're trying to please all these people at the same time, and it's just too much, and it's not allowed to just be what it needed to be. It's like the prequels. It's like Star Wars Episode 1 trying to be as massively appealing as possible, and therefore it appeals to nobody. So anyway, jumping off the softbox here.
Yeah, I took
tinfoil hat. Tinfoil hat's off. Do you guys have any final points?
Your words deflected as
totally. Yeah. I was gonna read one last
craziness
thing. This is just something that
your old man in the woods in a cabin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, with my
totally very accurate.
Yeah, the inside of this is all tinfoil. Just FYI. So Milton Kress is significantly worse than he is in the film in License to Kill. Milton Kress is the guy who gets his head exploded by Franz Sanchez. And he's just like he's a rich butthead who beats his wife. And
I remember the guy who gets his head blown up. I actually watched a movie with the guy who plays in that guy. Never mind. Keep going. Sorry.
So he's talking about how rich he is and how he's traveled the world looking for exotic fish and all that, because that's all the Hildebrand Rarity is. It's a fish. It's a rare fish.
I thought it had something to do with the diamond, because doesn't Octopussy play into that?
No, I haven't even gotten to Octopussy yet. That's at the end of my
Yeah, but I
answer.
thought the story with the Hildebrand Rarity,
It's about a
it's
fish.
something. It's not about a fish.
It's about a fish.
Just a fish.
It's a
Just
fish.
a fish.
So, where is the fish? So
It's about a
he's
fish.
talking about how he's talking about all these different places he's been. He's like, France is stupid and Italians are stupid, you know, all that. And then so Bond
Are
just
they?
wants to push his buttons because Bond obviously hates this guy. He says, your argument reminds me of a rather sharp aphorism I once heard about America. Care to hear it? Yeah, sure. It's to the effect that America has progressed from infancy to senility without having passed through a period of maturity. Mr. Kress looked thoughtfully at Bond. Finally, he said, well, I say, Jim, that's pretty neat. Like,
That's whatever you're talking about for you.
Whatever. All right.
later,
Yeah, weird limey.
I'm pretty sure Bond kills him. He definitely dies, but I'm pretty sure it's Bond that does it. And then I don't. And then we'll continue.
Yeah, because
later.
I was under the impression that they brought the Hildebrand Rarity into Octopussy because that was the whole diamond thing, right? Somebody says no.
Clever says no.
I don't know if he's saying
Oh.
no to me. B, you got to be specific. It's his
his
wife.
wife.
Okay. Oh, okay. Right. It's
You're
ambiguous.
wrong,
It's
Charles.
ambiguous. I'm totally wrong.
Charles, you're wrong.
Remember,
Different type of-
the cobwebs are coming off. So
Oh
what
my
happens is,
It's that tinfoil. You gotta take the tinfoil off.
It's on
He,
a bit
Signal. You get a better 5G signal.
yeah. So okay. Unknown cake lover. Is it?
he already removed all the 5G towers. in
Is
this
that
area.
is it absolutely
They
his
spread
wife,
COVID.
or is it kind of vague and that it could have been one of three people? And then Bond realizes at the end that it was probably her, and she's playing all sweet and innocent, and Bond's like, there might be some secret psycho behind her. She might be really hot. Like, I might like that, you know.
She might be hot.
Bond says, how could a girl have so little guts? Or was it that women
You're
could
right,
take
it's
almost
vague.
anything from a man, anything except indifference? Which
Jake Lover
that
says
I
you're right.
okay, cool. So it is vague. But Bond's like, by the end, he's like, I'm pretty sure it was her. Like, it could have been these other people. It's got to be her. Anyway, I highlighted that because that made me think of Natalia. About our whole thing with Natalia was that she, she kind of had that smile with Bond when he's chasing her in the tank, but it isn't until he says, shoot her, she means nothing to me, that she freaks out. And she's like, I need his approval now. How could a girl have so little guts? Or was it that women could take almost anything from a man? Anything except indifference. And that is like, Natalia, boom. Shooting to the end, because I believe it's right at the end. Yeah, without looking into it, I think it's I think they're all just kind of hanging out, and I think Bond is just putting together. I think the wife is like secretly crazy.
You can do it.
You know what I'm trying to do? I can't get it.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to get it onto my eyeballs and then like hold it, but I can't seem to get it.
Cake Lover did go on to say, but as I remember it, no one else has any reason to, but I don't know what he's responding
Well,
to.
it's like the whole thing is that the guy is just I did this view again. The guy is just a big butthead. He's just like, everybody wants him dead. So I think they just hear, and I think Bond, I'm trying to remember. I think Bond's like, I might have to do it or something, or maybe he planned to at some point, and then it happens. And she had a good reason because he was beating her up and all that. But so anyway, I think he's just hanging out with everybody afterwards, and he's like, it could have been there's a secret killer amongst us, and I'm pretty sure it's this chick who has been a victim, so it's like there's like a monster inside of this little thing,
He says
Bond's eyes were hard as
Lover,
flint as
I
he
don't
watched
remember
the girl.
anyone else on the boat having any reason to kill Crest.
Yeah, and that's my point, is that she had a specific reason. Everybody else had zero reason to like him and would be okay with him being rubbed out. But it's Bond's eyes were hard as flint as he watched the girl. Surely that put the finger on her. Now he would make some excuse, get out of the trip. There had been something about that particular way of killing a man. So Bond's like, maybe I won't bang her. Maybe I'll just let this one go because, you know, I don't want to be next. Anyway, so that's that gets us to Thunderball. So we've gone on way too long tonight. So
we can talk about Thunderball next time.
Yeah,
and then maybe
we're just,
also
again,
talk
these are
about the
just
bracket.
these are just hangouts, and yeah, we'll be done with the villain
teasing the
bracket by
bracket.
then. So
Which the villain bracket is so like, I'm like, some of them I'm very surprised, some of them I'm not very surprised. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
But I guess
There have been some upsets, just like any other March Madness, even though
like
it's January.
Blofeld going all the way. Donald Pleasance, he keeps going, and I'm like, how is this happening?
I don't get
Why
it.
is this happening?
Yeah,
I think Donald Pleasance, Blofeld reputation is what's everything is riding on, because you think James Bond, you think like Dr. Evil type characters, and he's the epitome of that. And I think people are like, oh, well, yeah, he's better. And then you go back and watch your episode about it, and we clearly kind of like, yeah, he's super overrated. Like he's not great. And then you got some of these other ones that are
he's
just
iconic, but you know,
yeah, exactly. But then you have other ones.
That's
like,
it.
What?
And he's you have to be able to, again, for I've said this numerous times, how as a kid or just in general, I always watch the movies in random, and then to watch them in order and to see how awesome faceless Blofeld is, and then you get to the odd mixture, again, the spectrum of Blofeld with the kill Bond now, and you know, and it's like it's fun in a cartoonish way, but it's really dumb. And you know, when you're going to analyze
that
it's really dumb.
And there's definitely things I would have changed with our bracket as far as the order of things. I still stand by putting all the Blofelds into different divisions. Like I felt like that just felt right to me. But I do think, because part of the problem is there's not a clear 32 villains. Fortunately, there were some films that have two main villains. So you have things like A View to a Kill, like Octopussy and A View to a Kill. Is A View to a Kill? Not A View to a Kill.
Living Daylights?
Living Daylights, thank you. Living Daylights, and that have like two villains. You could kind of say the same with, because I know when we watched the show, or in our show when we were talking about From Russia with Love, I mean, we put a lot of emphasis on Red Grant, but Red Grant's really like a super glorified henchman in that movie. But I mean, at the same time, he's also one of the main antagonists for the film. And then obviously I put Odd Job and Jaws in there because it's like they're iconic, you know. But I think I would mix it up differently next time if we were to do it again. If we do another one, I want to do gadgets. Yeah, gadgets or women, one of the two.
Well, let's just do both. You know, apparently we have plenty of time before we're done with this series, because
we're never going to be done.
Really enjoying Bar Never Dies, but we could talk about all things Bond forever, and there's nothing stopping us from ever doing anything like this, even as we move on to the next series that we choose and all that. Real quick though, just because I was kind of perusing this, so it's Liz Crest, and Bond's like, I'm pretty sure that Milton Kress didn't like get drunk and fall overboard or something. Because again, I think Bond was planning to do it. I'd have to reread the whole thing. I think Bond was planning to do it or something. But either way, suddenly there's like a scream and like Kress is gone or whatever. And she's trying to figure out what to do with the Hildebrand Rarity. And she's like, oh, I'll just, maybe I'll give it to the British Museum. Whatever, Bond says, somebody says something, and you really think so? A dew of sweat had sprung below her eyes. The trouble is, I don't really know where to leave for or what to do next, I suppose, because she's single now. She hesitated, not looking at Bond. I suppose, James, you wouldn't like to come on to Mombasa. I mean, you're going there anyway, and I'd like to get you there a day earlier than this ship of yours, this camp something, Kampala. Bond, blah, blah, blah. So he's looking at her, and he's like, she's sweating. like as we're sitting around talking about this murder. And then Bond kind of, Bond's a feeling instinctual guy, and
Shoots her in the face.
yeah, pushes her overboard to join her husband. Bond's eyes were as hard as flint as he watched the girl. Surely that put the finger on her. Now he would make some excuse, get out of the trip. There had been some sort of particular way of killing a man, but the beautiful, candid eyes did not flicker. She looked up into Fidel Barbie's face and said, easily, charmingly, "That won't be a problem. I've decided to give it to the British Museum," the Hildebrand Rarity. James Bond noticed that the sweat dew had now gathered at her temples, but after all, it was a desperately hot evening. The thud of the engine stopped, and the anchor chain roared down into the quiet bay. So he's like, do I want to bang this murderer or not? Like he's justifying maybe sticking around, but he knows that she probably did it. So anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna call it quits there. But we'll pick up on Thunderball, and then I don't know, maybe we'll do another 2 of these or something. But these are just hangouts. These are just hangouts to just kind of chit chat over the novels. We're halfway through, and
Just
we'll
to talk to
continue at
Cake
some point.
Lover.
That's
Yeah.
K1 and whoever else joins us.
Yeah. So, did you read K1's? I think you did.
I think we talked about it.
But yeah. So, all right. Yeah. Again, I mean, I think K1, you were talking about maybe buying these. If you do, you'd help us out if you used our affiliate links. But who cares
That
otherwise?
Sweet Amazon affiliate.
We might get a couple of pennies from who's Jeff Stromberg from Jeff Bezos Stromberg.
He's more like a Hugo Drax now, isn't he? He's not a Stromberg.
Well, I guess so,
because he's flying into space with his blue dildo. I mean, whatever it's called, I don't.
Well, now he's just Dr. Evil with that penis-shaped rocket.
Penis-shaped rocket.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I would if we took Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg, and we had to say which Bond villain they each had to be, who would
Zuckerberg would have to be today's Elliot Carver.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
Controlling.
And then
because he's got like media and like I could see that. I can see that correlate. But Jeff Bezos also owns the the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, or something like that, right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
So it could be that too.
Post,
but I like the idea. I like Zuckerberg, Elliot Carver. Okay. Okay. Keep going.
So Bezos.
What about
we said he's Stromberg just because of the shipping thing. That was all we said. Was like a shipping mogul. But he's in so many things that
because
I don't know if there's an equivalent.
Is that big? It's like a Hugo Drax, Stromberg. I don't know if he's a Blofeld.
Maybe he's Blofeld because he looks like Lex Luthor. So it's like we have to delve into the DC universe for him. But but he's like a combo. So if you just go with where he came from, he's Stromberg. Okay. Except for the whole wanting to fuck fish thing.
I would say, I would say I think Bezos is probably Stromberg, and then I think Musk is more Hugo Drax.
I think he's Hugo Drax because his
he's
personality.
He's actually legitimately trying to get like these giant space dildos.
Yeah, well, and I think they speak the
look
same.
like.
I think they speak the same. They're kind of quiet and calculating and like kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And also like I'm rooting for them, but as I said in the Moonraker episode, I wouldn't put it past Elon Musk to slowly, logically, reasonably move his brain towards genocide. Like, the logical thing would be to, kill the undesirables.
Well, he thinks we're in a simulation, and he's developing those chips to put people in the Matrix. That's not what he's doing.
Oh, well, yeah, the like neural
implant. Neural link. Yeah. And
so Black Mirror. Okay, cool.
He's got his like internet thing too, right?
Hopefully he doesn't team up with Metaverse and then
We all get
transhumanism
sucked
comes
into the
in.
Matrix.
He's gonna turn us into batteries for his cars.
yeah. How many BTUs do we put out as
There's
humans?
not enough.
Morpheus.
We can't
Oh
keep
my
making
God.
lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, turn us
We
into
need-
copper tops.
Baby batteries.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's what the Matrix sequel should have been. Is an evil genius turning us into car batteries.
Wait, were we talking? Hold on, wait a minute. Did we talk about the Matrix movie?
Well, I don't want to watch it
still haven't seen
unless we're gonna review it.
I was
don't wanna watch
talking.
it.
I think I was talking to a friend. No, I was talking to a friend about it, and they were like, "You know what this movie is? This movie is basically the Wachowskis just like, we don't really want to do another one." And they're like, "Well, you have to do another one." And they're like, "All right, we're just gonna make it complete shit." And that's what that's what they're like. You know what? We're just gonna kind of write in the movie how we feel about making another one.
I'd rather
then
they
on-
just kill
And then
themselves.
on top of that, just
instead.
be like, let's just make it shit.
They should have just off themselves so that nothing had been made, and then somebody would have
Someone.
I don't think
you
they
know,
gave a shit. I think they were
somebody
just
would have
like,
made something
whatever.
other than what they did make. But again, I haven't seen it, so but I anticipate really not liking it because and I knew that the moment I watched the trailer. I thought, well, no, let's not talk about this. Let's talk about this if we're gonna cover it at some point. Let's just
We'll cover it at a different time.
yeah. Let's
Someday,
end this.
some
I
way.
have I'm almost I'm done with my
I mean,
second
I'm-
beer.
Why not?
My
I'm
second
done
brew.
with whatever I have left. It wasn't
Bottoms
even a
up,
brew.
fellas.
All right, bottoms up.
To
Another one to Ian Fleming?
to Zuckerberg and Elon Musk
Baby
and the
batteries.
other powerful elite that's going to destroy us. Real
Bezos.
life Bond villains.
Yay!
All right, I'm going to end it now because we've gone way too long. Good night, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeet.
See you on part 3.